My name is Dyvik. I sit here in a fab lab that I run together with great colleagues in Oslo, Norway. The fab lab is called Fellesverkstedet, so you can see more about our facilities on our webpage. But what's quite exciting is that our non-profit organization that we made owns this building. So we've been closed for 2 years renovating this building, and now we're finally opening it, which is amazing.
Let me just underscore that. It didn't start this way. You know, Jens started roughly in a closet and then grew to a room, and in stages has now grown to a building.
Yes, so we just had a couple of hand tools and a good intention 7 years ago, all of us, and we built it up from there. So it takes a good team and patience. And so I'm actually formerly known as the Fab Lab Nomad. So from 2011 to 2013, I traveled around the world and I did a research project on business models for open designs, and I visited Fab Labs everywhere, including Kenya, where we made these grandson slippers for Barack Obama's grandmother. And then we ended up, what's really cool is that we had one of our users in our lab in 2014, he made a pancake printing robot. He was invited to show at the White House. And so we made these meta slippers where we have engraving of Barack Obama's grandmother getting new slippers for Barack Obama himself with his grandmother on. So we have a picture of her getting slippers with him, and then he got slippers with pictures of her receiving this. And what's so cool is, let's see here. So here's Miguel, and he's sitting right next to me.
What's up, Neil?
Hi.
Because Miguel is back in our lab now, and he's making machines for his makerspace that he's making outside his community where he lives 2 hours outside of Oslo. So the dream is come true on so many levels. So we have an old user coming back to clone the capability of our lab, and we have people are really starting to make these machines. So we actually have, typically it's like look at us, we made this machine, and now we're starting to taste the dream where other people are making the machines, and we just facilitate that as a traditional fab lab. So that's pretty exciting. So let's dive into the repo. You find all the files on GitHub. Our specific research project is called Fabricatable Machines. So kind of like human readable text. It's human fabricatable machines, so that machines you can make as easy as possible. So you see we have a wiki here. Before I forget, we have a contributor page. So it doesn't look like I've done all this on my own. So you can see here a link of all these different people who's been contributing. And actually, if you click on Jakob Nilsson, he even has like a shop where you have prices for kits. So he actually fabs commercially kits and assembled machines for customers. And that's Jakob Nilsson is a former Fab Academy student of mine from 2 years ago. So that's also really cool that he, as a local freelancer, earns a living fabbing these machines. So we don't have time to dive through all of the documentation because it is quite extensive. So, but sort of what is a little unique with our approach is that we have gone quite hardcore when it comes to how many of the machine components we try to make ourselves. So quite often a DIY machine, you buy the linear rails and you buy the actuators like the rack or the lead screw or the belt, and then you sort of fabricate the frame or the parts that holds it all together. And we try to fabricate those core vitamins ourselves. So we developed a CNC-friendly tooth profile based on the cycloid shape, and so on and so on. It's actually, and then we find ways to actually also CNC mill actual guideways. We were using glide blocks for a while, but that got too hardcore in DIY. We struggled with the performance, so now we're back to having bearings rolling on the surfaces. So if you go to machine family, then you can see an overview of all the machines. So you see we have recently made a PCB milling machine. This one was given away as a trophy for Oslo Innovation Award last year. And then you see all these different Humphreys, and Humphrey is definitely my favorite machine. It's a full format CNC milling machine. It takes a standard sheet of material, 4 foot by 8 foot. So So it's sort of a very real tool. And, you know, for a lot of us, the Shopbot is the favorite machine in the lab. And this is the clone of the Shopbot.
Why is it called Humphrey?
Yeah, so it was actually Alex Schwab. You know, I made the first one together with him, and he just suggested we should call it Humphrey. And then the prior machine, we called it Hank. So then we had an age theme going on, and since then we stuck to naming everything something at age. So actually the PCB mill is called Hedy in honor of Hedy Lamarr, since she had such an impact on, what's it called again, the frequency stuff, no? Can't remember.
Spread spectrum.
Yes. And then Hattori is a small format milling machine, and that we also made as a 3D printer. I love to show this one because this is screen printed black MDF. So it shows that the machine can also be expressive, and that, you know, you can make machines for other reasons than just the technical performance or a fetish of how it mechanically works, but it can also be a way of expressing yourself or make something fun, which I like. And then Hector is fun. This is similar to the Handybot, you know, that it's open through the bottom, so you can mill on something larger than itself. This one was made also by Jakob Nielsen, former student of mine. And then if you go down, we have a category experimental and retired machines that we don't recommend you to reproduce, like the one we brought to Fab 14 last year. Here you see it on the top of Francisco's truck. And then lots of Fab Academy students have used our system for making machines. And so on. And then you can sort of dig through the history of where we come from. If you go down to the bottom, we have future machines. So what we're going to do now is build a plasma cutter for our own workshop. So finally, we have a machine to play with ourselves, and also looking to go really large building size when time permits. So I'm going to spend the remaining of my minutes talking about Humphrey, and because that's, yeah, like I mentioned, my favorite machine. So we just had the Humphrey 5. It became operational last week. This one is at the local high school in Oslo. So one of our other freelancers in our network, Nikolai Kolstad, he fabbed this as a commercial kit for the local high school. So that's pretty cool because we don't subsidize the machine use when people do commercial projects. So then our lab has income from his machine rent. I get to spend my time as a lab manager helping him make this machine, and him as a freelancer has income from doing this business. And the high school who needed a big milling machine, they have a machine they couldn't get otherwise because this one is fully hackable, fully documented, fully open, right? So the students also participated in drilling and tapping the holes and so on. So it is really quite exciting times here in Oslo when it comes to machine building. So if you go down here on the Humphrey main page, Jakob has done the best job I've seen in my life documenting a machine. So if you go first to how to make a kit of parts, you find, you know, an overview of all the parts when they're done. You find links, you find a bill of materials with a pie chart showing raw material, hardware, tools and equipment, and so on. You're roughly at $3,500 US or euros. For all the parts, but they can get cheaper depending on where you source them. Norway is the most expensive country in the world to source these kind of parts. Yes, so you see here, if you go, for instance, to gantry assembly, you see step-by-step IKEA-style instructions on how to drill and tap and assemble and order and so on. So it's quite exciting. Like, I never participated in a project that's been this well sort of chewed or digested and documented. And now actually we get this luxury problem where we get less incentive to update the design because it means we have to update all this beautiful documentation. But then on that note, I want to end with sharing the machine behind me here. Because this is the machine that Miguel here is also making now. So this is all wood construction. So we use OSB as a torsion box in the gantry, and then you use HDF for the rails. So you have all the axes. And then you can see here our favorite closed loop motors, and then these rolling bearings, you know, and by having so many of them, we can use flat stocks. Then we don't need to try and mill precise V shapes anymore. Then you can use a water jet, a laser, a mill to just cut 90-degree cuts, and that's much more DIY friendly, you know. But you can see also there's basically like two H-beams screwed together, so the X and the Z-axis. So we get a very strong construction that is really not strong material, which is quite exciting. So Miguel here, you know, when we booked him in for 3 days to make a machine, and he said, "What the hell?"
Machines, actually. I don't know if you remember me from the White House, but
Yeah.
it's been a long time with Pancake Bot. I think he's been a little bit modest for all the work that he's done and everything that he's put together. But the fact that we can start an innovation center and a maker space and come to him to just put together a kit that we can then do more is absolutely amazing. So I encourage all of you people to check out his designs, check out the processes, and we're going to be testing out the smaller scale Humphreys based on, what is it? It's not MDF, it's the HDF. And we'll probably be getting back to you. So it's makerspace to makerspace, and who knows, garage, next makerspace, all because of this. So
next, you need to sign up for a Fab Lab network,
yeah.
so you can run these classes. You know?
Well, we'll do a big pancake bot too, you know, 20 by 20 pancake for you. But he's really setting this up, so it's awesome.
One last thing to mention is, for those of you out in the network who don't have access to a high-quality milling machine where you are, you can fly to Norway and fab the parts and bring them back as sports equipment in the luggage.
And we also customized ours to a Harry Potter theme to give the kids a little bit thematic thing, excited about it. So yeah, you can customize your own machines. That's the beauty of it.
Okay. That's fabulous.